Today, I want to talk about something that quietly shapes many of our lives. It's this pattern of self-sabotage that happens when you're living with two versions of yourself. There's the version of you who wants growth, the one that wants to be healthy, consistent, connected, the version of you that's actually trying to move forwards. And then there's the drinker version of you. That's the one who keeps tripping you up, derailing your progress and undoing everything that you're working for. Today, we're going to look at three different ways that that dynamic plays out. First, in your fitness and health, then in work and money, and then finally in your relationships. Now, for each of these, I'm going to use a different metaphor because they each describe a different kind of blindness. The way alcohol keeps us stuck in a loop that we can't quite see until we step outside of it. So firstly, health and fitness. You know that feeling when you finally found your rhythm? You're eating better, exercising, sleeping properly, you're in a groove. Your energy's good, your clothes fit better, you feel proud of yourself. That's the health-seeking you. Determined, consistent and showing up. But then there's drinker you. Persuasive, always looking for a loophole. You've had a good week, you deserve a treat. One night won't hurt. And then there's the observer you, watching from the background, almost sarcastic, like, oh really? We're doing this again. Now imagine this. You're jogging down a pathway, steady rhythm, legs strong, lungs full of fresh air. You're in flow. And out of nowhere, drinker you steps out of the bushes and sticks a leg across your path. You hit the ground hard and you get up again, you brush it off, but your rhythm's gone, you're sore, you've lost your stride. That's what happens every weekend when alcohol pulls you out of alignment. The calories, the junk food, the dehydration, the hangover days where you lie around feeling awful, they're not just setbacks, they're like an undo button on all of that progress. And the worst part really is that if the health-seeking part of you doesn't disappear, they're still in there waiting to get back on track, almost waiting for permission to start again. Now I know in my life there really was a painful dichotomy with this particular issue. I was constantly ping-ponging back and forth between being who I wanted to be and being dragged back into old patterns and unhealthy habits. When alcohol finally leaves, that tug of war just ends. You're not fighting yourself anymore, and each decision that you make compounds instead of cancels out. And you start to see how good it feels when your body isn't being punished for your mind's bad decisions. So, alright, that's the first way we trip ourselves up. Let's move on to the second one. This is sleepwalking through our work and money. Now, this one's a little bit more subtle, but in some ways maybe more damaging, because it eats away at time, which is one thing you can't get back. So you've got awake you, the one with ideas, ambition, a sense of direction. That's the one who's going to start projects, wants to save money, wants to build something meaningful. Then there's the sleepwalking drinker you, foggy, half present, just going through the motions. You're working, you're busy, you're talking about doing things, but the follow through never really happens. And of course, observer you is watching from above again, muttering, we've been here before. You do great for 5 days and then you lose an entire weekend to all this nonsense. So picture this. You're walking through your house at night, eyes half open. You think you're tidying, but you're actually knocking things over. You spill a drink, bump into a chair, move important things and forget where you put it. That's what it's like trying to build a career or handle money or run projects while drinking is a part of your life. You think you're making progress, but you keep undoing the very work you did the week before. Momentum dies, plans get delayed, money that should stay in your account ends up on a bar tab or on food you only bought because you were hungover or just too weak to say no to the temptation. And the next morning, awake you opens their eyes and has to deal with this mess that sleepwalking you made in the night. This was also definitely something that showed up in my own life. I would often find that in my attempts to be sober, I'd suddenly find things would go more smoothly. Boxes were getting ticked more easily, money seemed less of a stress. And then almost without my conscious awareness, the drinking would creep back in to my life and it would just undermine all that flow and all that progress. It's almost like I'd fallen back asleep again and back into a horrible dream. When you stop drinking, you wake up properly, you stop drifting, and you find that you're finishing what you start. You show up for ideas that used to die halfway through. And maybe for the first time, you'll start to notice that your effort actually accumulates instead of repeatedly evaporating. All right, so we've looked at the body and we've looked at work life. Let's go into the last one. Now, this is probably the deepest one. It's relationships and connection. This is the one that hits the hardest. Now, people joke about beer goggles, how it makes someone look more attractive. But the truth is, beer goggles distort everything. Not just how people look, but how connection feels, how love shows up, and how closeness works. Here, you've got loving you, the part that wants to show up, who wants to listen, be present, trust, connect. Then there's this beer goggle wearing you who can't see straight. They misread signs, they'll overreact, they'll chase the wrong people, or even push away the right ones. And then again, we've got observer you, just standing there watching the whole thing, quietly heartbroken, just thinking that you keep reaching out for what you want, but you keep grabbing the bottle instead and ending up with a mess instead of a healthy relationship. Now you can imagine it like walking into a crowded room looking for love, but everything's foggy and you can't tell who's who. Like you'll bump into strangers, walk into the wrong rooms, and all that noise and hustle you mistake for true meaning. That's actually what connection under alcohol feels like. You think you're being open, but you're not really there. You think you're bonding, but you're just numbing and creating meaning where there really isn't any. Now this can lead to arguments starting that didn't need to, words that come out that can't be taken back. The person who wants love the most keeps getting replaced by the one who can't see clearly enough to give or receive it. Now I know in my heart that it's only since I quit drinking that I'm able to see clearly what I actually want and need from my relationships. I'm now grounded in presence and I'm actually able to embody the kind of behaviour that would align me with the right kind of relationships. Ones that will nourish me and keep me sane and emotionally healthy. When the beer goggles finally come off, you just realise how much you missed while you were looking the wrong way. You see things clearly again and you can actually feel connection instead of chasing the imitation of it that alcohol creates. So that's the pattern. You're tripped up in your health, you're sleepwalking through your work life, and you're wearing goggles in your relationships. 3 different metaphors, but one truth behind all of them, and that is that alcohol turns life into a loop of effort and undoing. You try, you fail, you get up, you fall again, and it's not because you're weak, it's because you've been trying to build a life while another version of you keeps pulling the foundations out from underneath it. When that version finally quiets down, when you stop feeding it, everything you do starts to really count. So if you want to live life fully, presently, and with clarity, keep on watching in the third person. I'll see you next week.